Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Well, while Roz is busy, oh, you're ready to go. That's brilliant, isn't it? Well, let me introduce her then. She has come across from MIT, Boston in the USA, where she is founder and director of the Affective Computing Research Group at MIT. Effective computing as well as affective, I'm sure. She's also leader of a new initiative called the Autism Communication Technology Initiative, using some of these technology to communicate with people who are on the autistic spectrum. She got a BA from Georgia Institute of Technology in Electrical Engineering, so she straddles a number of different areas. Because then she got a master's and a doctorate from MIT, and that's where she's been since 1991. Well, while she reboots, I'll tell you, she also wrote a book called Affective Computing in 1997, which sort of kicked off this field. And I know there's a very active group in Cambridge here doing a very similar work.
So thank you. It's actually very exciting for me to be here. Real honor to be giving the Faraday lecture from a totally legendary scientist. And as an electrical engineer, I've been enormously influenced by his contributions. So tonight's talk actually begins with a story. This Toward Machines That Deny Their Maker subtitle was the title of a talk I first gave when Anna First at MIT decided to sponsor a lecture series on God and computers at MIT. Now you can imagine the email response to God and computers, everything from people laughing to, like, have they lost their mind? Why on earth would anybody waste their time on such a frivolous topic? To what became an enormously popular lecture series with the hall so packed out that the fire code people had to chase people off of the staircases to get them away. One of the emails that I got when I proposed machines that could deny their maker was this quip. I'd say there have been machines that can indeed deny their maker. They're called humans. And yes, of course, actually that's exactly what I was thinking. I was certainly one of those humans that denied any existence of a deity for most of my life. So I thought it was kind of an amusing thing that my colleagues were building robots that could possibly deny their existence and making them. So I decided to play with that a little bit. In fact, play is an operative word. I wrote a dialogue at the time that was presented, and then this has been completely rewritten now into a play that is really more now a comedy about what it means to be robot, but has taken off from this idea. So tonight I'm going to explore some of the ideas in that with you, not from the art play standpoint, but from the scientific play standpoint, since we have a lot of fun with that. And let's just kind of get past first this human-machine stuff, right? So these definitions in white, these are all just from Webster Online, are the usual notions of machines, right? Instruments, apparatuses, parts that might operate in a predetermined manner, usually material, although this is interesting, a constructed thing, possibly immaterial. And then down here in yellow highlighted, the living organism or person that acts like a machine, right? The one that annoys us, okay? So I'm not kidding, we do experiments with frustration, but of course there's the real life of technology that you just witnessed sometimes. And once my wireless antenna on my ThinkPad flaked out on me, and I was pretty sure that's what it was, I call the help desk at IBM, and I'm getting a guy who's very polite, and I'm sure quite well-intentioned, but he is forced to be a machine. He's going down a script saying, is it 1? Is it 2? No, I'm sorry, lady, I have to go through the script. Is it 3? Is it 4? I'm like, do you really have to go through the script? We get through the script. It's not on the script. I try to explain to him what it is. He starts back with item 1. It's like, no. So this is 2B, a person or organization that acts like a machine, right? And we might choose to follow scripts in our life, right? But do any of us really want to be forced to follow a script, right? That's written by somebody else. I think we want to be free. We want to believe that we're different from that. And yet, in AI, we have people trying to build machines that would follow the programmer's script. Now, some of these can be more autonomous than others. But let's look first at what's happening in AI in terms of the viewpoints here. I'm gonna break out 3. is to just build machines that solve really good, hard problems. Hard is good for computer scientists, we like that. And interact naturally with us, that's hard. Serving us in a way that reduces stress and frustration. All right, so maybe this machine could have apologized that it wasn't in its usual state, that the things I clicked on that it usually responds to didn't respond appropriately. Let me know that it screwed up and it's going to run some diagnostics so that that doesn't happen again. That would be nice. Sometimes we build computers like humans to just try to figure out how humans work. We build things to understand them. By constructing it, we think maybe we understand it better. And I think this is what's at the heart of those who are really operating in the third camp, which is just trying to build humans, emulate humans. If we could emulate humans, then maybe there's nothing mysterious about humans anymore. And this is kind of the strong AI approach. My friend and colleague Marvin Minsky has said with confidence that not only will we be able to build machines that are so vastly exceeding us in their intelligence, but we'll be lucky if they keep us around as household pets. Now, I don't know about you, but to think of spending your life building something that makes you feel like you'd be lucky if you were a household pet makes me question a little bit the rationale of that. And yet I share the rationale of wanting to understand how we work, and the desire to show that understanding through trying to build something. Now, is that playing God, or is that trying to just understand the mind of God or the world in a deeper way that shows what I do and don't have figured out about it yet, right? Because if you build it and it doesn't work, then maybe you haven't understood it fully. In this world of AI, I came along many years ago and said, there's another kind of intelligence people have been ignoring, and that's emotional intelligence, the social emotional intelligences that have to do with understanding emotion, reading emotion, communicating emotion, responding respectfully to people's emotion. And so I started this area called affective computing that at the time some people kind of laughed at, and the other day it was made into an IEEE transactions on affective computing, which is kind of mind-blowing to me to go from something that was sort of laughable to something that now has quite a field built around it. And the thing I think people started to recognize here is that when you look at the measures of success in life, whether any one of us is kept around in some job or able to move ahead in life in relationships or whatever your goals may be, often the people skills, the social emotional skills, the ability to see if what you've done was received favorably or unfavorably, the ability to respond respectfully to people, to be compassionate when you need to be empathetic when you need to be. These skills make a huge difference, and some say they make a much bigger difference than the mathematical and verbal skills. So I proposed that maybe computers didn't just need to be able to do math and language, maybe they needed social emotional skills. So these are things we've been working on, and at the core of this, there was a seed that really bugged some people. This theologian who was visiting MIT at the time was quite upset the first time I presented on this, and pulled me aside afterwards, upset, shaking her head, saying, "How can you give machines emotion? That's the last thing that separates people from machines," as if I was crossing some very special dividing line there. Now, I don't think it is, and I'm going to give you a few examples of the kinds of things we're doing, a little bit of the research, and then come back to how this is or isn't getting to that line, depending on your take. So first, a few examples. How many of you have interacted with avatars on computers, software agents, any of that stuff? Clippy? Some of the bad ones that goes up a Microsoft hand. And so these software agents, these little animated creatures, often drive people nuts, right? Like Clippy, you're sitting there frustrated, your computer's not booting, it's not doing what it always does, and it comes out smiling and winking and dancing at you. That's not emotionally intelligent, right? It looks happy at your misfortune. Even though Clippy has extraordinary intelligent mathematics and machine learning in it for recognizing things like whether you're writing a letter. The emphasis was not on a social emotional intelligence, it was on a very different kind of intelligence, which they did succeed at. So here, we've been building companions that would help kids with learning software, educational software online, and when the child is frustrated, the character might behave differently and change the pedagogical approach. than if the child is happy and engaged and moving ahead well with the learning experience. That's much like what a good tutor would do, looking at you and seeing if you're motivated and things are going positively, or if you're frustrated. Because it's one thing, right now they just look at you making mistakes, right? Here comes my dongle, thank you. It's one thing if you, that will remind us to return the nice gentleman dongle who we borrowed, thank you, Toby. So right now the computer can see if you clicked on the right thing or the wrong thing, right? Did you make a mistake? Did you get it right? But you could be clicking around, getting it right and looking completely confused, or you could be getting it wrong and looking frustrated, or getting it wrong and really being sincerely interested, right? And it could respond differently in those cases now. In fact, this reminds me, I didn't get to do this after rebooting. I'm going to start up something to show you a live demonstration of this, hopefully. Doesn't bring the machine down. These crazy MIT people, they just didn't try to do all these movies and live demos. This will work. I'm going to run a PC on my Mac in the background here. Live dangerously. All right. All right, well that's booting up. Let's see if we can play a movie of Professor Cynthia Brazil. Kismet robot, recognizing
being able to
emotions of speech.
recognize communicative intent. Very good, Kismet. And the way we've done that with Kismet right now is to have them recognized by tone of voice. Are you praising it? Are you scolding it? Where'd you put your body? No. No. You're not to do that. No.
So imagine when your computer messes up, if you were like bad computer and it shriveled up, right? You might feel a little more, well, you know, eager to have it back, right? Whereas when it floats, or one of the worst things I hated in the early Microsoft operating system, when it crashed on you and you rebooted it, the tune that it played upon boot up was this triumphant tune, you know, like, ha-ha, you know, I've wrecked your afternoon. So those subtleties, right, the mood, the tone, that it looks sorry or that it looks pleased are really important for keeping the relationship going long term. And so we want to give machines some of these abilities so that they behave intelligently and don't drive us totally bonkers when they mess up. Because even the most intelligent person messes up sometimes, right? It's how you recover from it that enables people to want to keep interacting with you. So here's an example of some work by Dr. Rana El-Kalyoubi, a close collaborator of mine who did her doctorate here at the University of Cambridge. And this was an example I'll show based on work she's directed. Takes regular video in. This was video trained on British actors and recognizes from it different affective cognitive states, combinations of states. Here are the ones in green. Agreeing, concentrating, disagreeing, interested, thinking, and unsure are the high-level categories. And these are built out of examples of British actors expressing things like brooding, choosing, thinking, thoughtful. None of us in America have figured out what brooding is yet. So if you want to help me understand that, it's a kind of thinking, I suppose. Let's see if this live demo will work. Booted and logged in. Do I have a volunteer who would like to try this? It's going to read your facial expressions live up here. Somebody who wants to. Do we have any British actors? Somebody here in the front row is raising their hand. Yeah, I don't know. The distinguished Andrew. All right, you've seen this, but it hasn't seen you, has it? Hasn't trained on you. Okay. Nothing up your sleeves. It's interesting. We just did the amazing Randy. Do you know him? Debunking a mind-reading computer with his paranormal psychic phenomena. One of my students has a computer that he claims can read minds. He uses all this technology. And my mouse has just disappeared. Oh dear. This is a comedy of errors, isn't it? You're from Microsoft. Yeah. Okay, my mouse came back. In fairness, I'm running boot camp on top of a Mac, so it's, you know, you just don't know what's going to happen all the time. Okay, so why don't you come around here and let's see if you recognize your face. Dr. Blake is a distinguished computer vision researcher who can explain all the technical details. Oh dear, we have terrible backlighting, don't we? Can we turn the, we want a light on his face, not a light behind him. There we go. Now it's finding your points, although if you move a little closer, it's finding you. Move a little closer since it's so dark, and we'll get a better chance of working to you. So what it's doing is it's trying to find and track these points on his face. So if he nods and shakes, like, hi, yes, it's, ooh, it's really slow, isn't it?
MIT is a long way away.
Yeah, MIT is a long way away. So the purple is going higher here. This is the probability from 0 to 1 of 6 different stochastic models. They have to be dynamic base nets. Each one is trained like a speech recognizer, not on phonemes or words, but on complex combinations of facial and head gestures. And as he stares at the screen, the blue one is high, which is the one that interprets his outward appearance as concentrating. So when British actors pretended to be concentrating, they looked most like your facial expressions.
Pretend to be bored.
Yeah. He tries to look bored, and if the frame rate goes back up, it's a little hard when it's dark like that. We saw the blue drop when he pretended to look bored. The red went up a little higher too, which was kind of a disapproving. And when he says, look at that, the green went up, which is interesting. And the purple went up a little bit, like there was a little bit of a smile. There's purple is a green, so if he nods and shakes and smiles, you should see that. If you shake your head this way, like why is that camera working so slow? I could build a better tracker than that. Very good, thank you. Just so you know, it's not just trained on me. Okay, I'm going to turn this off because it has an audio mode too, and when I go to put some sound on, it will tell you over the audio that I'm playing things like Roz is concentrating, Roz is concentrating, Roz is disapproving after the sound does that. Okay, let's see if this will work. Let me show you an example of where this is being used in our autism research. Again, a motivation for why give computers some of these emotional abilities.
Hello, how are you? Check that out. Me shooting you, shooting me. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. I like this thing. You like it? I like this thing. That's awesome. I made a perfect video.
I don't know. Well, for some strange reason, I think it would have been better with heat sensors.
You know what they're using heat sensors on pieces now for is for lie detection. You can tell if your blood flow is different if you tell the truth or not.
Don't even think about it yet. Oh,
If you got the face with it and the tape and analyze that later, that would be useful too. So he might not necessarily be just the visual part, but the voice with it.
Sync it with the voice.
Use it until later would be right.
one thing I did notice is that the wires, it would probably be easier if it was more of like a self-contained system.
Oh, here he's showing his mom a facial expression he learned. So these are all kids on the autism spectrum, most of whom have a real hard time reading nonverbal cues. And as we put the technology into a wearable system, it can assist them in real-time conversation, helping them see if somebody's interested, if the conversation's going well, if the person's looking maybe like it's time for the person to stop talking. This is what many of them have asked for. In fact, the red, yellow, green indicator I had in the software is one we tied to LEDs put in their glasses. So when the little camera they were wearing pointed out, you saw cameras and baseball caps and self-cam looking at the individual. When the camera reads the facial expression in real time and finds one that's conducive to continuing the conversation, it gives you the green light. If the person's looking away from you or looking disagreeing, you get the red light. Or confusion, which I see a lot of, you get the yellow light. Theorists do not agree on what an emotion is, just like theologians do not agree on many other things. There are a lot of parallels in the challenges that we face. And so what we do find people tend to agree on, although there are exceptions, is that emotion has two dominant dimensions. This vertical dimension that's described as the arousal, the activation, how much it kind of makes you feel like taking action, and the horizontal one that is more of the positive, negative, the valence, the liking, disliking. And the face is what most people, we think, read for the positive, negative, also attraction, aversion. And the autonomic signals such as skin conductance or some aspects of it that change with heart rate are useful for the vertical dimension as well. I'll play an example of this, the autonomic data being read from the skin conductance of a child also on the autism spectrum undergoing therapy here, occupational therapy. The two signals streaming here above live, this right edge is right now in the video. Those are the levels of skin conductance coming off of her two ankles. This is a signal that I'm also measuring off of my wrist here. I can tell you it's quite high when my technology was not working properly. And we see she was just in a peak here before getting in the ball pit. And then once she gets in the ball pit, we see the overall trend of the data going down. In this case, the ball pit, the deep pressure on her body is typically associated with calming for her. Of course, other things could be going on, cause it to go up. And then if we go to some other places, like here, it's a place where she's getting on the swing. And right when she gets on the swing and starts swinging, that rocking motion is very calming. So this emotion reading technology, this technology that's reading a piece of emotion, not all of emotion, not all of emotion experience, but one of the physiological concomitants of emotion. This is now enabling people to help understand what's going on inside somebody who might be feeling extreme stress or pain or frustration and be unable to communicate that with language. Many of the folks we work with are non-speaking, and they're very often misunderstood. They may be hypersensitive to something and not have any way of showing it on the outside. They may be stressed or pained or frustrated, and on the outside they look calm. Their motor system may actually detach and look calm when they're in an autonomic overload state. So this is a way to disambiguate some of that information using this technology. Now, when we talk about the artificial intelligence of emotional intelligence, then it spans a lot more things than what I've shown you right here. The two examples I showed you were two examples of reading some signals related to emotion, right? It's not the same as reading your true innermost feelings. Dr. Blake here could have, I mean, he's acting outward on his face, right? He may have smiled without being truly happy. In fact, there's a smile for pretty much every emotion. To equate smiles with happiness is a kind of a dangerous thing to do. We've actually been measuring lately a lot of people getting quite smiley when they're frustrated, maybe a coping mechanism. And they look like the sincere smiles too, the ones that we usually think go up only with happiness. So this expression of emotion, recognizing emotion, being able to respond intelligently to that, to handle people's emotions, are things that technology is making quite a bit of progress on right now. But do computers have emotion? Do they have feelings like you and I do? If they do, they need to be able to regulate them, right? We don't want our computer having a temper tantrum, right? That would be pretty insufferable. And we also know how to utilize our emotions in service of goals. I love some of the work of Alice Eisen at Cornell showing that if you've got a real creative task to solve, it behooves you first to get in a good mood. Go ahead and take a break and read the funnies or do something that makes you laugh or or feel good, it leads to a different kind of or it is associated with, have to be careful of causality in psychology research, it's associated with significant gains in broader kinds of thinking for many kinds of problem-solving tasks that follow those mood manipulation experiments. So we know that emotions can be used in all these interesting ways in us. What about machines having emotion? What does that really mean? People now are claiming to give machines emotion. Now this slide is a mouthful, and I'll ask you to just bear with me because part of the effect of the slide is that it is a mouthful. So I'm just going to read it very fast. So when we say a machine has emotion, we'll say something like it's being given internal signaling, regulatory prioritization, and resource reallocation mechanisms that indicate things such as an important goal has been thwarted. It is time to interrupt the planning system and request generation and consideration of alternate strategies, interrupt the attention system to watch for opportunities to implement the best possible alternate strategy. If an expert human asks what state the system is in, then respond with label $F$N, where $N is the load required to process the thwarted goal. If a non-expert asks, then depending on N's value, have the system say, this robot is slightly, somewhat, or rather incredibly frustrated. So it's a big mouthful, right, when we start to describe all the functions that this provides. Now, when you explain this to the popular media or the press, they don't want to say that, so they just say machines have feelings. So they declare to the public, machines have feelings. Now, to the scientists, there's a big difference between what's on the top and what's on the bottom here. We know that we have not given machines any of these things. The machine that I just described had all these functions, but it couldn't actually have a conscious sensory experience like we do, right? It doesn't feel what red is like. It doesn't it doesn't have the feeling of knowing, you know, the tip of the tongue phenomenon where you know the answer but can't think of it. It doesn't have feelings, what we would think of as moral feelings, right and wrong, good and evil. Although we can give it plus or minus 1 bits that are set when a person says that was the right thing you did, computer, +1. That was the wrong thing you did, computer, -1. And we teach it to learn with that. It will have these numerical states. They may function like feelings of right and wrong, but they're not the same thing. And this is another slide I don't expect you to read all the detail on. It's just some excerpts from a paper where we're giving computers a little bit of that positive and negative, good and bad feeling, so to speak, mechanism to guide some of its learning, to take some shortcuts in machine learning, to give it the ability to sort of steer at another level away from solutions that have not worked well in the past and towards solutions that might have worked better, associating those with feeling positive or feeling negative. But really it's just associating it with some numbers that really have nothing to do with its feeling. You know, when Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, right, it didn't feel proud afterwards, right? It you know, just sat back there chewing up power and running the same processes that it always runs, right? Checking the things it does when it's not engaged in playing chess. Now, as we make robots that have more and more of these functions, like people, and especially, I'd say, even more compelling to people is as we make robots that look like us, we start to get nearer that boundary that is, you know, admittedly disturbing to some people. These are actually old examples. Newer ones I think are even more compelling. From Ishiguro-san in Tokyo, actually Osaka. He made his wife robot and his daughter robot here. You can see his daughter robot moving here. She looks a little bit like I did when I got off the red eye at 6 a.m. yesterday. The movement isn't quite as natural as one would like, but the outward appearance is frighteningly human looking. In fact, the wife one I think is even more so. Let's look at this. You can almost hear the motor sliding. So there's close-ups of her eyes and all, right? Pretty compelling. So they're starting to look as if they're made in our image. We humans are making machines in our image. We are making them to look like us. We are making them have functions like the functions that we have that we understand. We can have some fun with this. The Chapek brothers, who coined the word robot in their play R.U.R., from the robot to drudge, to belabor, talked about the first 4 of these. The robots were filling the planet, they had emotions. Unfortunately, robot life expired after 20 years. The robots wanted to prolong it and make new robots, but they didn't know the secret juice or the secret sauce or whatever it was that gave them life. Could they get that and then have that recipe, get rid of all the humans and live their own existence without these humans? Imagine they did get rid of the humans and the humans left and robots went on and the world was just filled with robots. Now, the secret juice thing, this seemed like just an instrument of the Chapek brothers in a play, but it's actually quite serious these days. If you invite Rod Brooks here to talk, he'll tell you before he stepped down as head of the Computer Science AI Lab at MIT, and he's a world-renowned roboticist and a friend also, he said that not only does he declare that he is a robot, but the difference between him and humans, thinking that we're him and robots. There's no difference between him and robots, he would say, except that the robots aren't quite as far along yet. They don't have the juice, right? We haven't found that juice yet. All right, so we used to think software could do it, or special hardware. Now we think the trajectory software and hardware probably aren't going to get there. So what is it? Let's go looking for that. So he said he wanted to devote himself to finding this juice of life. So this is not just an instrument of the artists and writers to search for this. It's something that serious scientists are looking for too. And we don't really know what it is, right? We just know that it's what seems to be still in that gap between us and machine. We don't think it's reason. People thought it was feelings and emotion. I don't think it is. Now, there are aspects of conscious feelings and the qualia associated with sensation that are different. Now, mind you, we can give computers the notion that there's a little surge in voltage coming over the wires and some things like that. They can debug themselves. Tandem computers used to brag that the machine could detect its own errors and order the parts FedExed in to fix it before a human even realized something was wrong with the hardware. So there is some body awareness and some functional level that is already out there. But is it the consciousness that we have? And certainly this life-giving spirit or soul notion that many of us believe is not only possible but likely is something that is rather ephemeral and unable to be described at all or built into machines right now, other than trivial things like ask a computer a question, what is your name, or do you have a soul? And of course it could print out yes, or I have a soul, right? But that's trivial. That's not the real thing. So in this possible future where these robots are on a planet with no humans in sight, could they obtain this solution that makes them the way we think we are, free and living with spirits that are perhaps special in some way? And if we do, however, there's this amusing paradox that they could then simply declare that, hey, we don't need humans, don't exist. There are no humans around. I don't see any humans. Do you see humans? Robots could certainly have evolved from simpler machines, right? We see a whole lineup of robots in increasing sophistication that themselves might have assembled from machines that put together machines that come from transistors and ultimately on down to sand. So one could craft a story of the entire coming into being of robots without any humans involved in it. They don't need us, they could say. They could say we didn't exist. They could even ridicule each other for believing that. The word human could be completely deleted from all robot memories and could be seen just as some kind of ridiculous error that is made. So it's quite a conceivable future, actually. Right now, however, the reality is we don't know how to build things on this list. Now, as a scientist, we have to be careful. To say that we don't know how to build it or we can't see how it's possible with current things we can see does not prove that it can't be done. We don't know, so I have to put yet in here. Just because we don't see it yet doesn't mean that somebody won't ever see it. In fact, let's go on a little further. Some scientists have said, sure, we'll be able to build this because, in fact, we are simply a highly ordered collection of biomolecules, right? We're just material stuff. So if you believe that, then it's just a simple matter of finding the right material stuff. to build us. So this is the view of many of my colleagues. Rod put it quite clearly here in his "We Are Not Special" chapter. If we accept evolution as a mechanism that gave rise to us, we understand we are nothing more than a highly ordered collection of biomolecules. That is all there is. When I read stuff like this, it really bugs me, because this person is moving from science to statements that are not scientific. So bear with me a second here, I'll take this apart. We are nothing more than a highly ordered collection of biomolecules. That doesn't follow from science, right? You might assume that we are nothing more than a highly ordered collection of biomolecules. That's what he's presupposing here. That does not follow from this. Science cannot actually tell us this. In fact, I love Don Mackay has expression for when people use this device. He calls it nothing buttery. You know, science doesn't tell us that we are nothing but something, or nothing more than something. That is a philosophical statement that transcends science. We may assume, while we're doing our science, that we can't inject miracles or God in the explanations that we're creating. That's being a good scientist. But to assume that that speaks for all truth in the world is not being a good scientist. So to assume that the scientific knowledge that we can understand and develop is all there is really kind of a dangerous thing to do. So if you believe that, I welcome your pushback on that. I think it's actually rather myopic to have that kind of a materialist view, and I'll be curious how you deal with that. When people talk about, we'll build a robot that's like us, and then we'll know that we've understood what it means to be human, and that we will have proven that we're nothing but these material mechanisms, right? So this is one of the thrusts in AI. If we could build it, then we proved that that's all we are. But in fact, here's an example that will hopefully cause you to question that thinking too. Suppose aliens, landed on a planet and found the instructions for building a transistor radio, and they followed the instructions, put together all the pieces, and it looked right, and it weighed the right amount, and everything was there. And they turned it on, and lo and behold, it played music. So they might conclude music comes entirely from these mechanisms within the radio. We now fully understand music. It's what emerges. It's an emergent property of this physical system, right? Without, clearly, of course, we know that there's radio waves and all this other stuff too, and musicians and emotion and all kinds of other grand things that go into music. But they might wrongly conclude that by building it and having it work and produce these functions, they have understood what that is. That could happen to us with robots too. We could build them, have them look and act like people, and think that we have understood it, when in fact we might be missing something entirely important. To build it is fascinating and an amazing challenge. But even if we succeed at that, it will not mean that we have fully understood everything that there is to understand about humans. We don't know how to build it now. Will we? People have asked, Roz, do you think you'll ever be able to build this fully intelligent machine, that's like us? I don't know. I have a peculiar kind of optimism, though, that comes from having Christian faith, and here is one of these scriptures from 1 Corinthians 13 that maybe I read a little differently than most people. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known. To those of us trying to fully know what's inside a person, this suggests that it is all fully known. We are fully known. And while we don't know this stuff now, it's possible that we might at some point, at this future point. So I find that inspiring. I'd like to be there in God's classroom, getting the answers to all these questions. I don't know if we'll get them before that point or not, but I have that hope. Is this playing God? I don't think of it that way. I stand in awe of God. I'm not fit to even pretend to play any of the roles that I believe God plays. Is it seeking to know more? Yes. and to know fully all that can be known. And I think I love science. I'm a scientist. I use that in my work. But that is not all there is to knowledge and to what can be fully known. And I don't think it's going to lead to the full knowledge of who we are either. I think there's much more there as well. So now I'll end on that and welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ros, particularly for the live demonstration of human-technology interaction. Any questions from anybody? Has somebody got a microphone? Yeah, there's a microphone on each side if you put your hand up. So, oh yeah, it'd be good to have the lights on as well so we can see. Yeah. Any questions or comments from people? Let's have one from the front and follow one from the back. Yeah.
I was interested that you talked about people who raised the question of surely emotion is the thing that distinguishes humans that you'll never get to program in a robot. And you were saying, well, you don't subscribe to that because you can probably get inventors can get their heads around the emotion. So, and you also proposed some other things that might have that special role. And I guess consciousness is an interesting one, which you did mention, but didn't dwell on. So I'd be very interested to know what you think about that. It's often claimed by people who want to preserve a special place for humans, that consciousness, that's the thing you'll never do. What do you think about that?
So consciousness, like emotion, breaks down into things that, if I break them down precisely, I'll probably put half of you to sleep. But the main things are things like, you're aware of something that's going on. Now, a machine could have like a blackboard where it posts some lists of what's going on and processes. So there could be some kind of superficial awareness, right? But there's more to it than that. There's these feelings, right, that we don't know how to translate right now into functions that we know how to build. And that, still seems to separate us from machines. Again, we don't see how to cross that gap. That's an element of consciousness. It's an element of the subjective awareness and feelings, also subjective sensational parts of feelings. So those aspects, don't know how to build them yet, may forever separate us, may someday have the gap closed. I do believe they're knowable, however.
Okay, I just found it very difficult to understand what rejection by robot. I mean, you said robot can reject human, but it's very difficult to understand because someone can make a machine which has, let's say, 100 nuclear weapons and kill all the human beings on the earth. Then you can say that robot rejected human. But I don't think that is what you're talking about. So what do you mean by rejection? Or is it just robots ignore human? That is one way of rejecting it.
I'm saying they deny their maker. So the fact is right now, I think, let me know if you disagree, people made the machines that exist in the world now. We are their maker. We are the makers of robots. And as we make them in our image and make them ever more sophisticated, not only could we be gone from the planet at some point, but some virus or could be perceived positively, could run through all their memories and erase all knowledge of humans. And one could compose a story by which they came into being fine without humans, right? Machines make machines. Machines can make increasingly sophisticated machines. Machines can self-assemble. There's no need for humans to have ever been in the equation, right? Why should robots ever say humans existed? Robots could be sitting around on a night like this, giving talks to each other, debating about whether or not humans ever existed. How many of you believe humans ever existed? No robot would be caught admitting that, right? What a silly, non-scientific belief.
Yes, everyone happens.
There is in principle an important distinction there, which is that the robots develop science they would soon or later discover that they were a second generation life form, so to speak. In other words, they would find out that they couldn't have been constructed from the common materials of the universe as we appear to have been, but must have been made by some pre-existing technological species. So they would effectively be a second generation form of life, as anything else self-replicating that we created that could exist independently would also be.
That's presupposing that the final forms in which the scenario takes place are materials similar to the ones today that look, highly formed, right? One might say that some intelligent design was required to make the materials today, and maybe the, not to, assuming my fellow roboticists and I have some intelligence, right, or the designers of these, and in the future they might be made out of somewhat more organic materials. So that argument may or may not hold up, actually, especially if they're on another planet where there really were, maybe humans never did exist. Maybe the robots went and colonized that planet. So by the time they get there, there are no signs of human life, no coffee pots, no bad technology that breaks.
Pick up on that, do you think that we might actually reach such a technological singularity where robots can improve themselves? Could that be the last step which is then needed to cross to give them juice of life or consciousness or whatever we might want to call it?
My answer to that is no, we're not at that technological singularity. PowerPoint doesn't seem to be getting any better. It seems to be getting worse. It takes me longer to get a file from one side of the machine to the other instead of less. So I don't know, one step forward, two steps back, a little bit. I like to think the progress is positive. The reality is, it's not moving along as fast as Ray Kurzweil's predicting in his exponential growth charts. Certainly not when it comes to usability.
Yeah, I was just curious, like you started with this quote by this theologian who was thinking that you were crossing the line. Did you give this talk to this person, and what was the response afterwards? Like, what are they thinking now?
No, she hasn't seen this talk. That's interesting. I did talk with her for a while afterwards, and she agreed that, well, maybe it wasn't as scary as she thought. But there's still so much not known, right? I don't find it threatening when you think, though, of us again trying to build something that is like us, provided that, depending on sort of the reasons, like, again, if it's to keep us around as household pets, well, I find that rather offensive. If it's, for other reasons that are, to bring about some greater good, to help people with various needs, disabilities, to help us have deeper understanding and enable us to do, achieve our goals and so forth. I don't have a problem with that. I do think that we, need to be humble with what we can and can't do and to not overstate what's possible. And that does tend to happen a bunch with the nothing buttery types.
So there's a question back.
Hello, yes, thank you. It was a comment on what makes the juice of life in humans and how can we find that and emulate that in computers. And I was thinking about the whole discourse within social science that thinks about whatever else humans are, they live in culture and they live in relationship. And so I wondered, is it possible, what is the route to building a computer, a machine that can understand whatever it does understand, not by reference to internal logic, but by its cultural and relational environment, its external environment.
Yeah, we tend to call that its context, and we have, it's actually a big topic in machine learning and machine perception to have machines interpret that context, and they can certainly have the ability to interpret it differently in different cultures. So take, for example, the facial expression recognition that I showed. The nods and shakes of the head can mean different things in certain cultures, right? If anybody here is from India, maybe you can explain to me what the head nodding, in India means. My students just laugh at me every time I ask them to explain it. It's not the same as yes and no, right? And that's a cultural difference. And so when the machine sees a person doing this head movement from India, maybe it could be taught what that means also, right? I'm getting at your question. Yeah, I'd say we're definitely not there right now, but that's an very important aspect of our existence, right? To understand, and one in trying to emulate that, and a machine would try to do that. Although I don't think they're really working on it from that perspective. Good challenge, or not.
Let's just take 2 more questions from over here.
To what extent do you think it's important that a robot should be embodied?
Boy, there's a lot of work on that right now. Give you a couple different viewpoints. One of my colleagues thinks bodies are totally useless, that he's never done anything in a physical, and he's married too, never had any experience in a physical interaction that he says he couldn't have had by email. One could question this. He did admit that because of the studies, the babies don't thrive if they're not touched, that maybe like for the first year or so of life you need a body, but after that, didn't think it was necessary. On the other hand, I have colleagues like Cynthia Brazil up here showing Kismet, her robot that she did in her doctoral work, and continuing to do embodied robots, with doing studies where, for example, there's the embodied robot you're interacting with, then you go over and interact with maybe a video of the embodied robot versus an avatar versus just the usual laptop or something doing something. And people find it more arousing, more activating, more exciting usually with the physical robot. That can be good or bad. There are certain things in 3D you can do with a physical robot that you can't with the non-physical forms. We work a lot with kids on the autism spectrum, trying to help them with turn taking, eye gaze, things like that really need to be done in the 3D world. It's not the same to make your character in Second Life, a little avatar, look in that direction. So I think for some things the body is essential, and it's fascinating to me that we have them, right? We aren't just brains and bats in some matrix world, just all living in, nth life somewhere. We are embodied creatures, and yet there's something in this material body that we still can't get our minds and science around. That is evading us. What is it? It's mysterious and fascinating.
Let's have one last question.
I was going to, I don't know whether you thought this possibly is slightly frightening, whether this process of developing these things that deny their maker could be somehow the beginnings of the horned beasts that we see in Revelation. So these machines you develop by humans go on to develop themselves, and that's how the apocalypse comes about.
Oh golly, what a note to end on.
Clearly the answer is no.
Horrifying thought. The military, there are people there who are trying to make machine soldiers, that go out there and fight, that are autonomous beings, and killing machines, and it is a bit scary, right? I can imagine that would be great content for a science fiction thriller movie, which of course is designed to be dystopic, and scare us. Gets more of teenagers like my son to show up. They love that stuff. I would probably be pretty troubled by that one. But I'm sure it would sell tickets. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think it's time to discuss the apocalypse over a drink, which we'll do shortly. Just a reminder again, on the 19th, Friday the 19th, 5:30, Great St Mary's, debate between the Archbishop of Canterbury and Terry Eagleton. Do recommend that. And let's thank Ros Picard again.